Welcome back to Multiversal Studios. This is the breakdown of episode 9 and 10 of Yu-Gi-Oh Capsule Monsters, and the last challenge of the series for Yu-Gi and his friends. This one is called the Fiendish 5. However, this episode is split into part 1 and part 2, so we will be covering both parts in this video. So it's going to be a pretty long one, so stick with me guys. We've made it this far into the series and I can guarantee this video will blow your mind. Also, make sure to like and subscribe. Alright, let's jump into the video. Now, the last portal actually brings Yu-Gi and his friends back to the same forest they were in when they first arrived in this world, leading to a full circle moment. Now, this is also the moment Alexander the Great arrives and reveals his identity to Yu-Gi and explains how this place came to be. This is the moment we've been waiting for, as it provides answers to many of the questions we've had in the first place. Now, Alexander is shown to be wearing the same armor that Yu-Gi received, meaning Alexander the Great had also been a part of the Capsule Monsters game. And if you guys remember, we learned in the first trial that there had been only one other person to have played this game. So Alexander the Great was the first one. Now, if you remember what we got told by Alex at the end of the second trial, if you fail the game, you get stuck in this world until the next people come along, which sounds suspiciously like what happened with Alexander the Great. Now we finally get the backstory of Alexander the Great on how he almost took over the world with the help of his good luck charm, which was the Millennium Ring. Now honestly, when they mentioned this fact, this was actually amazing. Not only does this tie in with the original story, it also opens up so many interesting questions, like what has the Millennium Ring been up to for 3,000 years whilst the Pharaoh has been sealed away. Now eventually the Millennium Ring started to cloud Alexander the Great's mind and he lost the respect of his men. However, this is where he ran into the guardian of the Millennium items, which was Shadi. Shadi wanted to test Alexander to see if he was worthy of the Millennium Ring's power and worthy of being a true king. Now it's unclear based on the conversation, however it's pretty much implied that it was Shadi who built the pyramid and created the shadow game, which is the Capsule Monsters. Now if this is the case, is the board game also Shadi's doing? And what would be Shadi's purpose for doing this? Now my first thought on this is Shadi powerful enough to create a shadow game of this magnitude? However, I think as a guardian of the Millennium items and the wielder of the Millennium Key and Scale, I think it's definitely possible. Now we learn that after Alexander failed Shadi's test, he also lost everything and his kingdoms. In an image of Alexander after his defeat, we see him without the Millennium Ring, so potentially Shadi took it from him after he was defeated, which explains why Shadi had the Millennium Ring when it was found by Bakura and his father. Now I think Alexander the Great is a fascinating Yu-Gi-Oh character, and I probably will be doing a video on just him and his story, whilst also reflecting on the Alexander the Great we learnt about in history. So if you want to see a separate video on just him, let me know in the comments down below. Now Alexander reveals the scroll for their last challenge, and it reads, "Slay them all if you dare, earth, fire, sky, water and air." Now the last challenge seems very straightforward, however since it's the final trial, and from what we've seen so far, you already know it's going to be tough and not what we expect. Now something I do find odd, before they head to the next challenge, Alexander gives Solomon a capsule monster. Now as he does it, he says this.
"Which monster's inside? One that you'll need if you expect to pass this test."
But when Grandpa uses it, inside is the Curse of Dragon. Now the way Alexander talks about it makes it sound like it's gonna be something like Exodia. Now the funny part is, why did he give it to Grandpa? If this monster was really important, surely he would give it to Yu-Gi. Well, I like to think he's been watching the party throughout the trials and realizes that Grandpa has been useless so far. So he had to take it upon himself to actually give him a capsule monster. Like, I'm not trying to be a hater, but even Grandpa's ability to translate Egyptian hieroglyphics isn't needed since they have a Tem who can also read it. Now they head to a small village for the last test, known as the Village of the Divine Dragon. Now they come across a ritual where a little girl was going to be sacrificed. Her soul was needed for the Divine One, which is clearly the Blue Eyes White Dragon, in order to protect the village. Have we seen this storyline before? I think we have. In the Legendary Heroes arc, where Yu-Gi and his friends enter a virtual game created by Seto Kaiba, the main storyline is regarding a princess called Adina, who looks exactly like Mokuba, and the bad guy is called the Witty Phantom, who wants to sacrifice the princess in order to summon the mythical dragon. However, Princess Edina talks about a prophecy about a legendary warrior who will come and slay the dragon. Now, this story so far seems like they have already taken an existing storyline and just repurposed it, but instead of the mythical dragon being the 5-headed dragon, like it was in the Legendary Heroes arc, this time it's the Blue Eyes White Dragon. And spoiler alert, the main bad guy in this episode is the 5-headed dragon, as well as the fact that the Legendary Heroes will come to slay it. I think this is what we call lazy writing. Now let's just pretend like this is an original story plot and analyze the rest of the episode. Now Yu-Gi and his friends arrive and stop them from sacrificing the girl and learn about the tragic tale of the village. So apparently this village was attacked by 5 different dragons, and the Blue Eyes White Dragon protected the village and banished those dragons to different areas, and by doing so protected the village until the heroes arrive to slay the dragons. However, since the Blue Eyes has limited energy, it requires sacrifices in order to have the strength to protect them. Now I feel like they tried to paint the Blue Eyes as the savior, but he also ends the story with this line.
That's why we hold this annual ritual. For the White Dragon feeds on human souls.
Now to me, it sounds like the Blue Eyes is just as bad as the other dragons. Also, everyone else in this village was okay with the little girl being the sacrifice, just because she volunteered. I genuinely at this point can't decide who the villains are in this episode. Is it the Blue Eyes White Dragon? Is it the villagers? Or is it the 5 dragons? Maybe when the scroll said, slay them all if you dare, it actually meant all of them, like literally the villagers and the Blue Eyes as well. And as they headed back into town, they came across a statue of a dragon with a sword underneath, stuck in the stone, and only the legendary warrior can unlock the sword. I feel like I've heard this story before about a sword being stuck in the stone. No, impossible. This sounds like another classic original story created by the writers of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now this magic sword actually comes with its own prophecy. When a great power descends from the sky, the sacred sword will rise. Now the party splits into 5, each one heading to a different dragon. The first one was called the Whirlwind Forest, where Joey goes and faces the Lustre Dragon number 2. The second is called the Bottomless Spring, where Grandpa goes and faces the Aqua Dragon. The third one is called the Cave of No Return, where Taya goes and faces the Serpent Knight Dragon. The fourth one is Meteor Mountain, where Tristan goes and faces the Meteor Dragon. The fifth one is called the Great Molten Chasm, where Yugi goes and faces the Tyrant Dragon. Now 10 points to whoever came up with those names. I gotta say, definitely creative. Now this also relates back to the scroll, as each of these dragons are a different attribute, which the scroll mentions: earth, fire, sky, water and air. Now if you're wondering why there's sky as well as air, well, apparently air is Lustre Dragon number 2 and sky is the Meteor Dragon. Now Yugi goes to the most dangerous place and unlocks the Black Lustre Soldier, and as you can see from the thumbnail art, which I've been using, I think we know what's gonna happen. Now they all manage to defeat the dragons in their first attempt, which I find incredibly strange. The only people that have monsters stronger than the dragons they're facing are Yugi's Black Lustre Soldier, who's got 3000 attack compared to Tyrant Dragon's 2900 attack, as well as Taya's Seiyaryu, who's got 2500 attack compared to Serpent Knight Dragon's 2350 attack. Now Joey's Red Eyes has the same attack as Lustre Dragon number 2, but Tristan's Thunder Dragon and Grandpa's Cursed Dragon are much weaker than the dragons they're facing. Also, let's not forget, in episode 1, they established a field power bonus, and each of these dragons are in the middle of their own environments. They should be way stronger. Like for example, how is Tristan's Thunder Dragon beating Meteor Dragon on Meteor Mountain? Huh? But anyway, they soon realize that these dragons are actually invincible, and even after they are defeated, it isn't enough, as they just come back. Now Yugi's plan is to bring them all back to the village, since the prophecy of the sword mentions that when a great power descends, meaning the 5 dragons, the sword will rise, and that's exactly what it does. Yu-Gi uses the sword to absorb the power of the dragons and then slays them. However, that wasn't the end of the test, even though in every respect it probably should have been. But the 5 dragons fuse together and become the 5-headed dragon. Now this is technically where episode 9 ends, however we are going to go straight into episode 10. Also, why did Alexander give Grandpa the Curse of Dragon? Is it because it's a dragon and it helps boost the sword's power as the sword absorbs the power of all dragons? Because technically, Thunder Dragon isn't even a real dragon, it's a thunder monster. Sorry guys, someone had to say that. Now Grandpa finally has something relevant to say. He mentions that in the Capsule Monsters board game, there's a 5-headed dragon that can only be defeated by light monsters. So it turns out that sword was another item in the game to actually throw off the heroes because it didn't solve their problem. Now this is the part of the episode I actually dislike the most. The NPC character, which is the girl who was going to be sacrificed at the start of the episode, prays to the white dragon to come and help Yu-Gi and his friends. However, at the start of the episode, we already established that the white dragon needs souls to power it up in order to help. However, just by praying with the entire village, she was able to summon the Blue Eyes White Dragon, which means two things. The villain, which is the Blue Eyes White Dragon, always had enough energy, but probably just enjoyed the human sacrifices. It also means that Yu-Gi and his friends were saved by a bunch of NPCs. Now, if the girl had seen how much Yu-Gi was struggling in order to protect her and the village, and then ran to the altar and then sacrificed herself to the Blue Eyes White Dragon, that would be way more impactful as a scene. Now don't get me wrong, that's a pretty dark storyline for a kids show, but it would be following the rules that were already set by the episode. Now as the Blue Eyes White Dragon was summoned, Yu-Gi used his dual armor to fuse with the Blue Eyes. Now I won't lie, this is one of the coolest scenes in the entire show. Not only did Atem look amazing with the Blue Eyes armor, Atem also single-handedly closed the dragon's mouth and with sheer strength picked up the entire dragon and threw it to the ground, and then right after used white lightning attack with his blade. Honestly, this scene sent goosebumps down my spine. What an awesome scene. I had to watch it multiple times. The music, the action, the armor, Atem's final words before dealing his last final attack. Amazing. Now this wasn't all. They added a side-by-side comparison of Atem whilst he was ruling Egypt. Genuinely, this scene made me forget about all the minor issues that led up until this moment. Now with that, they had completed the last challenge, and usually this is where the episode ends. However, there's a lot more to dive into guys, so stay with me. Now that the pendant around Tea's neck had all 5 pieces completed, Alexander instructed them that it was a key to unlocking great power, a power that allows them to rule the world. Now we actually received some very important information. It turns out the Millennium Ring had split Alexander into 2 souls, the good version which was trapped in the Capsule Monsters game and the evil version which was trapped in the pyramid. Now Dr. Alex Brisbane was actually a direct descendant of Alexander the Great and a colleague of Grandpa Moto for many years. However, once they entered the pyramid together to investigate, the dark side of Alexander the Great took over Alex Brisbane's body, leading to all these unfortunate events. Now in theory, this answers all our questions. We now know who created the pyramid and the game, which was Shadi, and we know the backstory of the masked man, Alexander the Great. But if you guys remember in episode 1, where Joey wins a convenient raffle to India, and the plane crashes at the exact location as the pyramid, who organized all of that? Well, Alexander the Great explains that the evil side of him, who took control of Dr. Brisbane, had brought Yu-Gi and his friends to this part of the world. But that seems very tough to believe. That means the raffle ticket was organized by the evil Dr. Brisbane. And was Joey the target for that raffle? How would he even know that Joey was going to enter the raffle? How did he organize all of this whilst being trapped in a small area in India? How was he even sure that Yu-Gi and his friends would pass all the challenges of the Capsule Monsters? And what if Yu-Gi decided that he didn't want to go to India? To me personally, it doesn't seem very well thought out and very unlikely. Let me know what you guys think on that. I'm very curious, so let me know in the comments. Now, in order to escape the game, Alexander told them they had to concentrate. Their plan was simple. They head back and meet Alex Brisbane, who is being controlled by the evil side of Alexander the Great. Now, the good Alexander the Great would hide in Grandpa's body and fight his evil side and take control. Now, this plan almost worked, but the good side of Alexander the Great failed to take control, and Grandpa, believing that the plan had worked, handed over the key to Dr. Alex Brisbane, who was still evil at the time. I won't lie, Grandpa sure is trusting. He just takes the guy's word for it and hands over a potential world-ending key to the man who wants to end the world. I won't lie, there's only 2 episodes left of this series. If Grandpa doesn't do something miraculous to redeem himself, I swear to God, because everything he's done up until this moment has been terrible. Now with the evil spirit in possession of the key, he unlocks a door where great power is held. However, at that exact moment, he is jumped by Yu-Gi and his friends and they all fall into what looks like space together. And this is where they meet Shadi. Guys, that is the end of the breakdown of episode 9 and 10. There is only 2 episodes left, which have also been split into 2 parts. So we will be covering them in one final video, which will come out the day after tomorrow, since there's so much to cover once again. So guys, there is one final video of this series and then we're done. So stay tuned for that guys, and until next time.